Hey garden friends, I am so excited to share this video with you today, talking about my medicinal and culinary herb gardens that I grew this year, the progress we've made, and how much I have harvested and used these herbs in the last season. Hi, my name's Landon Gilfillan with Pepper and Pine Garden Design, and this past season I have been doing a series on growing a culinary and medicinal herb garden, and I'm so excited to share this video with you because it's basically the end of the season, and I want to show you how my gardens did and tell you about all the awesome things that I've been harvesting. Right now, I'm sitting in front of what I like to call my small cottage garden. If you caught the video earlier in the season, this was basically a blank canvas at the beginning of the year. It was a small garden that our previous owners had put in here. There were some plants, some bushes I didn't really particularly care for, and I basically pulled everything out and replaced this garden with a bunch of medicinal herbs, and you can see them behind me here and how prolific and huge they are. This has been such a fun garden. I'm so glad I chose to do this, if not just to look at. It's so beautiful. All the different flowers and the colors and the bees, and it's just been flowering all season long. I have harvested a lot from this garden, but I just enjoy looking at it more than anything else. And behind me here, I've got black-eyed Susans. My cone flowers just bloomed this past month. These are ones that I planted as starts at the beginning of the season, so I knew that they would be slower to bloom than the ones that were already established in another bed. You can see the anise hyssop back here, which has just been buzzing with bees all season long. I do have some just regular flowered gladiolas in here, some pansies, but on the other side, I've got nasturtium and basil and feverfew and marigolds and calendula and tons of comfrey. The comfrey is huge, and I've learned throughout the season I probably should have just put one plant here instead of 3. So I'll probably be trying to remove 2 of these plants and plant them under my fruit trees. I've learned that planting comfrey under fruit trees can actually feed the tree with lots of the minerals, because the comfrey roots go so deep down into the ground that they pull up all those minerals and actually feed the plants next to them. So I am going to try to dig out 2 of these because these plants are so enormous. I really only need 1 in this bed. And then here you see the beautiful amaranth, which is falling over because it's so heavy with amaranth seeds. So we're going to be pulling those off this week. And this has just been such a fun garden. I also want to take you over to some more of my herbs I have in my larger garden and show you how I've been harvesting them, how I've been using them, and my plans for them this season and into the fall and winter. Before I take you over there, I just want to give you a panoramic though of this beautiful garden, and I'm going to try and add a picture of the before so you can see how much this is filled in. So here we have the beautiful magenta amaranth, comfrey, the brown-eyed Susans. These are just some annual flowers I put in here for color here at the base. This is all cone flowers here, and I'm pretty sure the deer were eating the heads off of these, which is why they haven't bloomed, but these have. This basil plant, this is one plant, has been so prolific. I have been cutting off of this all season long. I've got feverfew here and yarrow I've also been cutting off of, and I'm just kind of let these, their season is finishing up here. I've got the marigolds, some late blooming marigolds, the anise hyssop, and bee balm on the other side. Down here I've got nasturtiums and these beautiful calendulas. Aren't these the coolest looking things? They're so frilly compared to some of the other varieties of calendula I'm growing in the other garden. I've just kind of let these bloom. But I wanted to show you, if I still have it here, the seed head of these, how you harvest them and can collect the seeds from them. we go. This one might be ready. Right. It's not quite dry, but what you can see right here is these little fronds, when they turn brown, will become the seeds. I mean, these are the seeds right now, but you really want to wait till they dry before you collect them and store them. But these are seeds I can use to harvest for next year or just spread throughout the garden if I want. I've also got some sage, some Tulsi or holy basil in here. This has just been such an awesome garden, and to fit so much in a small space. If you only have a small space, there's still so much that you can do in that space. So don't let space be a limitation for the things that you want to grow in your garden. So I'm over here in front of my big garden where I have most of my fruits and vegetables. And I just want to show you these amazing sunflowers. I love planting sunflowers around the perimeter of my garden, these gigantic Goliath sunflowers. And they have been showing their beautiful yellow faces for the last week or so, and have just now bent their heads over full of seeds. But look at how big these heads are. I don't know if you can tell, but this is probably almost a foot in diameter, how big these heads are. And they're just so cool to look at, cascading over the garden like this. Just wanted to show you that before I dig into the flowers that I have here on the perimeter. I put a wildflower mixture all along the perimeter of both of these gardens, along with some zinnias. And this has been another really fun garden to harvest from. Let me show you what I've been picking here. So here you're gonna see some varieties of marigolds, which I've been harvesting. You can use marigolds for a variety of things. I actually plan on using them for natural food coloring. I have a daughter who is very allergic to a synthetic food coloring, so this is a great alternative for us. We've got all kinds of black-eyed Susans in here, which you can also use. I haven't really collected a lot of these this year. I haven't necessarily needed them for my purposes, but I plan on looking into it for the next season. But one of the really fun, or I should say several of the really fun things that I've loved harvesting from this year have been the bachelor buttons or cornflowers, these really pretty blue ones. If you've ever had creamy Earl Grey tea, these flowers are what they use to make it creamy. They're called cornflowers or bachelor buttons, and I've collected a ton of these, and I'm so excited to use them in tea this season. I have a lot of them already dried and stored away, and I continue to collect them almost every day. Another really fun one, which you can find pretty much anywhere on anyone's property, is the red clover. So right here, you should see red clover probably anywhere on your property. It's considered a weed. It has these little oval shaped leaves with these little white imprint, and they make these really pretty little purple flowers just like this. Red clover is actually known as an herb that is really good for women's health. You always want to check with your doctor, of course, before you use red clover if you have any sort of hormonal issues that might be affected by the way that they will adjust your hormonal balances. So I've been collecting tons and tons of red clover. Every day I'll just walk along, and you want to make sure you get the ones that have just bloomed, that don't have any brown on them, because the minute they show signs of brown, it means they're starting to die, and their oil, their essential oil, or the medicinal components are not as strong as they are when they're just blooming and you don't see any brown. But red clover is an excellent thing to store away. It even tastes a little sweet if you have ever tried it fresh like this. That's why the deer and the bees love it so much. But red clover is a great addition to teas and tinctures, especially for women. Just wanted to show you a more prolific plant here of the bachelor button and comb flowers, just so you could get a sense of what they really look like when they're all blooming. Such a cute little flower. And they come in different colors. You can have like this light lavender blue. They come in pinks, like a light pink, a dark pink, and a dark blue. And they're just such a pretty flower. Another one of my favorite herbal plants that I've been collecting from all season long is calendula. I've talked about calendula in a separate video, which I have linked here. But the calendula is just one of the most prolific herbal flowers that you can grow. They just keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And the more you harvest them, the more they'll grow. So I'm out here every day, if not every other day, just pulling off these flowers. You want to get them earlier in the day than later in the day. That's when their essential oils are more potent. And you also want to get them when they've just bloomed, not when they've been out here bloomed for a longer period of time. They won't be as strong. You want one? Here you go. But calendula is one of the most awesome herbal remedies for skin irritations, whether it's diaper rash, bee stings, any kind of skin rash. We've had a lot of poison ivy and other sort of irritations in our house lately. And so I'll take my calendula infused oil and rub it on the skin, and it really is helpful for cuts and scrapes and all things along those lines. And I'll be turning my oil into a salve here in the next day, and we'll hopefully do a video to share that. But calendula is one of the easiest things to grow in your garden, and it blooms all season long. So on this row are where most of my culinary herbs are. Right here I have a huge spread of oregano. I didn't necessarily need to plant this much oregano. However, it is a beautiful plant. It's just started sitting up. It's really pretty. Can you come here, please? Pale purple flowers. And it gives it such a nice perfume to grow here along all my tomatoes. So do I need this much oregano? No. However, I have been making regular cuttings off this plant and many other plants in the garden, taking them inside and drying them in groups so they don't feel overwhelmed by too many herbs at one time. I'll just take a little bit in at a time and dry it and store it. And it also keeps these plants growing more prolifically the more you harvest from them. So as you can see here, lots and lots of beautiful oregano to share. And then down here, I love this plant. This has probably been one of my most favorite plants in the garden this year, and this is lemon verbena. This plant sends off the most amazing perfume. I just want to hang out here all day long. In fact, my daughter and I have talked about how much we want to turn this into some sort of candle or soap in our house because this scent is so amazing. And this plant started off as a very small plant at the beginning of the season, but has clearly grown and grown and grown. And I continue to harvest from this one daily as well. Not daily, but fairly regularly. I come in here and I'll clip what are the more softer stems. This plant can become more woody, like a rosemary plant. But the more you prune on it, you'll get these sort of softer branches, and this is what I've been harvesting. And the more that I harvest of these, the more of these little branches continue to grow. So it's just going to get bigger the more I harvest from it, unless I take too much off at one time. And generally that rule of thumb is do not harvest more than a third of the plant at a time to keep it from being stressed. But clearly this plant has not experienced too much stress because it is prolific and beautiful, and I love it. And then along this row, I have tons and tons of marigold. You can see the orange and the yellow flowers all along here. I did that specifically because I wanted them to grow alongside my tomato plants, but I just love the flowers. There are so many to collect, and just like the calendula, you can just pop them right off. And I try to get them earlier than later when they've just bloomed versus when they're starting to turn brown like this. When they're like this, I can collect them and save the seeds for a later planting. So right here, if I pull back these dead petals, you will see all the seeds right in here. So all of here are the marigold seeds that if I want, I can either just cast into the ground and they'll grow back next year, or I can take inside and save to plant for next year. Then right here are the rest of my culinary herbs. These have not grown as strongly as my oregano down there and some of these others, just because they were shaded so much by these tomatoes. So I am hopefully going to transplant these inside to over the winter them and then put them in a sunnier spot next year. That being said, I have harvested from these all season long. So I've got some different sages here, more for beauty than anything. I have a regular sage, broadleaf sage plant over there that I have been cutting from. These are some different cultivars, which I love and have also been harvesting from. Then I have my thyme down here, which again, if this was in a sunnier spot, would probably be much more prolific. But I've been harvesting and drying from these and using them fresh all season long, as well as my rosemary. So again, these would be much bigger if they were in a sunnier spot, and I will change that for next year. But these have been awesome to cut from and use during this entire season. Another plant that's been great to harvest from, obviously, is basil. And I've had so much basil in this garden. I've had regular sweet Italian basil. Right here behind me, I have what's called window box basil. Or there's another name for it I'm forgetting. I'll zoom in here in a second. These are the cutest, most lovely basil plants I've ever grown. However, they're hard to use. Because their leaves are so small, it can kind of be cumbersome to pull them off. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so because the leaves are so small like this, it's kind of cumbersome to try to get the leaves off the stem and use them for food. So I would just want to make sure that I use the really tender stems like this. These I can cut up and put directly in a dish or even in a pesto, so all is not lost. But once you get down to the more woodier stems, you're having to pull off all those leaves, and that can really be tedious. But I do love this window basil just for, it smells amazing. It's such a beautiful plant, and I totally did not mean to uproot this. So I'm going to take this inside and put it in some water, and maybe I can overwinter it. It really is a lovely plant, and what I'll probably do is cut off a lot of this and use it in some sort of pesto or sauce that I can freeze and use over the winter. And then I've grown cinnamon basil, which I use here and there. I think, again, that was more of just for aesthetics. I love the beautiful purple leaves and the purple flowers that a cinnamon basil produces, but I haven't used it as much in the kitchen. I've really been mainly just using my regular Italian sweet basil and this window basil. But clearly having basil in the garden is one of the best things to use if you love cooking. But you can also use Italian basil medicinally, and there are different ways that I will hopefully expound on in another video that you can use sweet basil medicinally in your herbal medicine cabinet. So basil is great on both the culinary and medicinal front. So here are some of my sweet Italian basil. This is like one of 5 plants I've been growing, probably 6. And as you can see, it hasn't gone to flower because I continue to harvest off of it. And there is a place that you can harvest it right here that'll encourage it to keep growing and producing more stems. And I have a video right here that you can check out if you want to learn about how to propagate basil. But I've definitely been harvesting from these plants. This is the Tulsi, or the holy basil, that I've been harvesting from. And I absolutely love this herb. The smell, the perfume that this plant sends off is heavenly. It is in line with the, or in competition with the lemon verbena. And the bees are generally prolific. Thankfully, they've kind of dissipated for the time being because it's in the afternoon. But I have been harvesting from these plants regularly because I love Tulsi tea, especially in the winter. So I'm looking forward to getting in here and harvesting all these leaves for more Tulsi tea. This is my cinnamon basil plant. So I wanted to show it to you just so you could kind of see the difference. The leaves are very similar to your sweet basil. They tend to be a little bit more slender, but their flowers are just this deep, gorgeous eggplant purple, which is why I love this plant so much. And compared to the Tulsi, or the holy basil plant, you can see how similar they look. This is more of a light lavender flower, and this is more of that deep eggplant purple. And then down there is the Italian sweet basil, whose flowers are white. So when they're all blooming, it's really just a beautiful border to any garden. As you can see, I have a ton of Tulsi basil, holy basil. There's no way I could harvest and use all of this, but I have been making a valiant effort to store it away as the season has wore on. I will come out here before the first frost and gather as much as I can just to make the most of this plant. And I do intend on storing some of this cinnamon basil as well, just to have a different flavor profile for some of my cooking. Some of the other plants I've been harvesting from as well all season long are chives. These actually bloomed early in the spring, and I didn't actually think they would be viable. But as the seasons wore on, these have become less woody and more soft, like you imagine chives to be. So we collect these regularly, and one of my favorite recipes to use chives in is actually a coleslaw that I've been making all season long from my cabbages that I grew. And I love adding fresh chives, fresh parsley, fresh thyme, and fresh, and I am blanking on the other herb. I'll write it right here when it comes back to me. But chives, this is one plant, and one plant is enough unless you just love them and you love the flowers they produce. This one chive plant has been enough for our family of 7 all season long. So if nothing else, grow a plant of chives. I promise you, you'll enjoy it. And then right here behind me, I wanted to show you this red clover plant. One of many, but just how beautiful it is, just as well as a great addition in your herbal medicine garden. Here's my chive plant, a really nice addition. And then behind it here are all these red clover. So you can see here just how cute and pretty they are. I really thought I was pulling a lot of these out at the beginning of the season before I realized what I was doing. And then I've ended up letting so many of these stay because I will harvest these regularly. Last but certainly not least, the 2 herbs I probably harvested from the most at the beginning of the season were dill and chamomile. Now the chamomile has done for the season. We collected a ton of chamomile flowers and have cut it back at this point. This will all come back next year. So next year, this will be a huge chamomile garden, but the dill has continued to produce over the season. As you can tell, it goes to seed, and right here at the top, you will have all these dill seeds, which you can use in cooking and baking. You can also use it to pickle or just to plant for next year. And then I continue to harvest these flowers and stems. I love putting these in jars for pickles or anything I'm pickling. I will just put an entire flower like this, or I continue to come down here and harvest these stems when they're nice and green and bright. Most of these are too brown for me to harvest and use in cooking, so I have just let them dry, and then we'll come out and harvest all these seeds to use in cooking and dishes and for next year. And that's really it. I feel like I'm forgetting some herb, and I'll have to come back to you and talk to you, but I think that pretty much expounds what I've been growing this year in the garden. And before I close out this video, I want to tell you how I'm using and storing them and how I've made that really an easy practice this past year. So what I've done this season to really make this herb garden feel simple and feel like I'm making the most of all the things I've grown is every time I'm out here, I harvest something. Whether I just walk through and pick off some flowers, or I take a big harvest and go inside and dry it, I'm just constantly gathering herbs and drying them. And I've done that over this whole season. Right now it's September 22nd, I think, first day of fall, as it turns out. The purchases that I made has been really, really helpful. Is originally I was drying all my herbs on my kitchen counters. I would lay them on kitchen towels and cover them, or I'd put them in my oven with the pilot light on just to dry them a little quicker. But it became cumbersome to have my counters covered with all the herbs. So I ended up buying this herb drying rack that has been awesome. It's basically, here's the picture of it right here, but it's basically a mesh contraption that's got all these different pockets that you can zip that keep the dust out, keep bugs out, and then I've got 6 compartments where I can put all these different herbs to dry in one like 2-foot square space that hangs in my bathroom. That has been amazing because it's so big. I can fill it with a ton of herbs and grow 6 or 7 different varieties at a time. So I highly recommend grabbing something like that. It was not a huge investment, but it was totally worth every single penny. Second, I want to recommend Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herb Book. Rosemary Gladstar is known in the herbal world as an expert. She's really easy to follow. She has a lot of simple recipes, and I just love this book, whether it's for beginners or someone that's been doing this for a long time. She breaks down a lot of the herbs individually, especially ones that you can find in your own yard, whether you've planted them or not. She's done a really good job of making growing herbs a very doable and easy practice. And so I highly recommend this book, and I have used a lot of the recipes in this book throughout the season. I'm currently making tinctures and tea blends and oils in my house that I'm really excited to use throughout the winter and that I've already been using this season. She also has another book that is strictly herbal recipes. I think there's 150 recipes. So if you look for Rosemary Gladstar herbal recipe book, I found mine on Thrift Books, but you can find it anywhere books are sold. I highly recommend that book as well. And then the only other thing I would suggest is I love having a dedicated notebook for the various things in my gardening life. I have a dedicated garden notebook, but this one is specifically for my herbs. So I like to write down the herbal recipes that I'm really wanting to focus on, the ones that I am wanting to work on that week, so that I'm not flipping through a book or flipping through a website. I have exactly what I need right here in this book. And so if that is something that might be helpful to you, I suggest having your own herb book so that you can keep all your notes and recipes in one place. My last bit of encouragement to you is that herbs, whether flowers or plants, are some of the easiest plants to grow. So if you're a beginning gardener or you haven't had luck with gardening in the past, growing herbs is seriously the best place to start because they're so easy, they're so prolific, and they're so useful, whether you're using them for cooking or whether you're using them medicinally. I love herbs, and I'm really excited to continue to grow herbs and use them in our house. And per my husband, the things that we've been using in our house have really been effective, and they've helped to deal with a lot of the little illnesses that we've had over the season, whether it be congestion or a runny nose or itchy skin or a cough. They've been great. We haven't had to go to the doctor once. Obviously, these are not severe acute illnesses, so I'm not suggesting you ignore your doctor's advice. What I am saying is herbs are a simple and easy and effective way to help your family during the winter season. So if this video has been helpful for you, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and check out the How to Grow Herbs playlist. Share this video with someone you think it might be useful for. And as always, my name is Landon Gilfillan here at Pepper and Pine Garden Design, growing gardeners and their gardens. And I'll see you in the next video.